getting bad. The live stream your YouTube. Presentation teacher was really good today. That's for yeah, they came very cool. They're hiring as I asked. Nobody's been asking a little bit. So mine works. Okay. There we go. That is live stream, so you can click OK and then put this up. Okay. Sorry. Making an exercise day. Okay. Very cool. It's on YouTube. We're on YouTube. We're YouTubers. We're YouTubers.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in our biology department speaker series. If this is your first time, welcome. Today we have a panel and this is our health science series. Learn more about our health sciences programs here at STC. And today we have Dr. Selena Casas, Program Chair for Occupational Therapy Assistant. Thank you for joining us. Diana Hernandez, Program Chair for Physical Therapy Assistant Program. Thank you. And Gabriel Peña, Program Chair for Respiratory Therapy. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us today.
We also have Ms. Mari Vargas. She's our guided pathway specialist here at our division.
Oh, that's excellent. Thank you. Okay, so the way that our panels have worked before is that we invite a few of you to join us, and we start collecting questions from mostly our students that are taking a class in our biology department. And we've gathered a few of these questions. While we are going through these questions, we may also gather additional questions from those students that are with us right now live. And we are gathering this in our live chat in our YouTube page. So beginning, let's start with some of the questions that we have gathered before today, so that so that we can kind of start the discussion. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So first question, and we have a lot of students that are kind of worried about this. So let's start with this, and hopefully, each of you can give us a little bit of information for these students. What challenges do students face in each of your programs, and how have you addressed it?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. Okay. I'm Selena Casas from the Occupational Therapy Assistant Program. I think one of the biggest challenges that we notice our students face when in the program is time management and getting used to a full-time face-to-face program where they come on a daily basis, and trying to find balance among the courses as well as with life and with work. That's often one of the bigger challenges that our students face.
And I'm Diana Hernandez with the Physical Therapist Assistant Program. Like Dr. Casas said, time management does tend to be one of the biggest challenges. These programs are full-time and daytime, so it makes it difficult for students to work. Many of our students end up having to temporarily stop working or reduce their hours significantly, because we do cover a large amount of material in a very short period of time. Our programs are only, a PTA program is only 5 semesters in length, but it's a lot of skills. So their ability to manage their time is very important. And so often they end up having to remove distractors or anything that is not essential, and anything that's really unrelated to a focus on school. What we've done to try to address that is try to improve our instructional strategies to minimize the amount of work that students have to do outside of the building. Although they still are responsible for reading and whatnot, we have begun to transition to more of an active learning environment, because we have found that students are able to retain their content better when they have engaged in active learning strategies. And then we also have a lot of resources to help students become more efficient with what they're learning. We collaborate with the Center for Learning Excellence, who has tutors in each of our disciplines, you think?
Yes.
So each of our disciplines, Ms. Vargas is our guided pathway specialist. So she meets with our students every semester, not only when they are in crisis, but before they experience crisis, so that she can help them be familiar with what's available on campus as resources. And we have lab assistants who are licensed practitioners who work with us part-time, and they bring in their clinical expertise to spend time with students outside of hours as well. So we've tried to create an environment that is very conducive to learning, with the understanding that our students are giving up their time, they're using their resources, and we're trying to make sure that the time that they spend with us is very fruitful.
Hello, my name is Garo Peña. I'm the program chair for respiratory, and I agree with those things. Like, a lot of it is time management. I think, like, from a student's perspective, when they take classes, they select the classes that are more convenient for them. So they might pick, like, for example, a 10 o'clock class because they don't wake up early in the morning. But when you get accepted into the program, you kind of lose those privileges, and we have a set schedule. And then it's I attended a lot of meetings, and when you enter a program, you're full time with us, right? And a lot of us don't want to hear that you have another job that is full time. So, like, they cannot request that they, like, oh, I need to be off on Friday because I'm working this day. I tell them I don't want to hear that, because they're gonna miss a lot of information. But I think if they're serious and like if a student is serious, they can. I mean, my recommendation is for them not to work, but we don't pay their bills. And the other challenge would be the time management. But we kind of tell them ahead of time, like they need to save money, they have to rely on financial aid. There's a lot of resources. But I think that's the biggest challenge that we have. I wish we all have like scholarships that we can offer them. But you know, we cannot tell them not to work, and we understand that, but we'll work as much as we can with the students.
I'll add to that really quick. When I meet with students, one of the biggest challenges that I see with them is the content, the level of learning, and a lot of them have a lot of difficulty with reading comprehension. So, you know, them not understanding what they're reading or telling us it's too many chapters or the chapters are too lengthy. So they're not used to that type of academic, I guess, rigor.
So something that Mr. Peña mentioned, we had questions like this. So for each of your programs, you recommend, so part of the questions were, can I work and still be part of the program? What's your recommendation? And the reality is that most of our students need to work. What suggestions or alternatives do you have in each of your programs for these students that need to work? What's your recommendation? Should they work? And if they need to work, what alternatives or recommendations do you have for them?
None of the programs have like a part-time track or an alternative for only taking night classes. We don't have the staffing or resources to offer that at this point in time. They are all daytime programs, full-time. So our first recommendation is don't work, if that is an option, but every year there are students that have to. So what the option is early morning, late evening, or weekends.
Yes. So yes. So again, we can't tell them not to work. If they have to work, they have to work. But you know, it's not recommended they work as Mr. Peña said, a full time. You know, it's going to be very difficult to do both.
And that is a big challenge. But I think some of our students, they have to talk to their support group, and there's a lot of sacrifices that go on. So I see a lot of, for example, male students where the wife has to work extra to kind of help out, but it's only like 2 years and it goes fast. So I do encourage the students, like if they have an opportunity to save, do so, or work full-time right now and start saving money. So when you're in the program, because we hate to see a student leave because they have to work, especially when they're passing their classes, because when they graduate with us, they're going to have a really good job, you know, and we want to make sure that they're successful, right? But it's an investment, and they have to do part of that sacrifice, I think.
I do tell my students that it's a short-term sacrifice for a long-term goal. You know, at the end, it's going to be worth, you know, the sacrifice.
The other strategy is they will work over the Christmas break. Some will pick up extra hours over spring break. And then I know our curriculum has one summer session off. I think yours does too.
Ours has a summer course, but I do it virtually online. So just that one class.
So we do try to build in the opportunity for them to work over the summer.
And those that do come to me and that are working either in the evenings or weekends, what they're doing is more online type of work instead of having to go somewhere.
Yeah.
So that's more flexible for them.
Okay. It is important that students are aware of these things. I guess that's why they are also asking this. I want to know, or students want to know, for how long is each program? And does your program have clinical settings, like, for example, the ADN programs do?
Yes. Ours is a 5 semester program. So it's equivalent to 21 months. The last semester of their program, they do fieldwork rotations, and they do a part-time fieldwork rotation in the fall of the second year. So in the fall, they do Fridays, and then in the spring, they do full-time fieldwork. So there is where definitely they cannot work at all, because that is like a full-time job, their clinical rotations, and they do 2 8-week rotations for a total of 16 weeks.
And PTA is also 5 semesters. We start in the fall, and we will go fall, spring, summer, and that's year 1, and then fall and spring, and that's year 2. So that's what constitutes the 5 semesters. So it's a 21-month program as well. We do a full-time clinical experience in the summer between year 1 and 2, and then more full-time clinical experiences in the final spring semester, for a total of, I believe it's 720 clinical hours, that they do 6-week rotations. So they go to 3 different facilities, 3 different experiences. We try to make sure that they've gone into different settings, so that upon graduation, a student has a better idea of what kind of setting they want to work in. For example, outpatient or sports medicine, or inpatient rehab, or a neurological setting, or a pediatric center. So those are some examples of places that students will go.
And for respiratory, we complete, it is also an associate's, it's 2 years, so it's 5 semesters. We complete a total of 1,000 hours in the program, so we start in the 2nd semester, but we're mostly hospital-based. So we start at 5:45 in the morning, and we usually do like a 10-hour shift or a 12-hour shift, sometimes twice a week. So it is a lot of hours. But then again, the students really enjoy the hospital experience and seeing like what they learn in the classroom. So it's a lot of hands-on. It's easier said than done, because I tell the students, imagine if you have to go to Valley Baptist Harlingen in the morning, and you have to be there at 5:45 in the morning. At what time do you have to get up and be there on time, right? So we're using Mission, Edinburgh, and all the way to Valley Baptist Harlingen. And we do have students that are coming like from Brownsville, from Starr County, and they have to travel. So once they hear other students doing those sacrifices, they're like, okay, I cannot complain that I'm from West Laco going to Mission or something like that.
So I'm sure that ADN has also talked about, the student would need to be aware that they need transportation during those particular experiences. They'll have to have a way to get to clinic, because yes, OTA and PTA, we also place students all across the valley, anywhere from Brownsville to Starr County.
Okay. So I'm glad that you added that as well. Okay, a little bit more specific. And this is for, I guess, Mr. Peña. What conditions do respiratory therapists treat, and how does the program prepare students to manage them?
A lot of our areas, our skills, we divide them by the level of the class that they have. But in the clinical settings, we're all over the place, like in the ER, adult ICU with babies, in the neonatal intensive care unit. In the medical floor, we treat patients that have asthma, emphysema, lung cancer, any kind of respiratory problem. So as a student, they get to see everything like broad, and then they can, once they graduate, they can say, I want to work in a pediatric children's hospital, or I want to specialize with adults, or I want to be in the burn unit. But the idea is they're gonna get all of that experience, like 1,000 hours. And one of the things that we do is we kind of do a survey with our graduates to see how well prepared they are in different facilities. And we're getting really good feedback that basically I tell them, I'm gonna show you how to drive, but I'm not gonna take you to New York to drive, right? But they're able to do that. They're able to go to big cities and compete and do their skills. So.
Okay, thank you. And this, I guess each can but how do the physical and occupational therapy assistant programs ensure students are up to date with the latest research and techniques?
We are both accredited programs nationally, and in order to maintain your accreditation, you have to show ongoing evidence that you are current with the most recent standards and regulations. And that includes the use of textbooks and resources and evidence-based practice. So the programs are constantly evolving to ensure that we are reflective of the current clinical practice. And then when students are engaged in their practicum experiences, that also facilitates a match between what we're doing in the classroom and what the students are able to do in clinic. So we get a lot of feedback from our clinical sites regarding the strengths that our program might have, and then they help to identify if there's a new technique or new procedures that are becoming more popular in the clinical settings. Then we start that process of pulling that content in. So our programs are constantly evolving to stay abreast of current practice.
Yes, I agree. And also as faculty, we are always taking continuing education courses to grow, right? Because we're all therapists as well, right? We're licensed therapists, and then doing our own research, right? And like Anna says, getting the latest textbooks that are out there, the latest equipment that's being utilized, or the techniques that are being utilized out in the field. And learning about them ourselves and implementing them into the classroom. And that way the transfer of learning, once they're from the classroom into the clinic, it's a smoother transition, and they're prepared.
So for each of your programs, how early students get hands-on training?
Day one.
Day one.
Yeah, we start with labs in the first semester, and they'll get upwards of 100 skills in a particular semester. So it starts immediately. And actually, years ago, we revised even our prerequisite Introduction to Physical Therapy course. And PT teaches it only face-to-face because we start teaching skills there. We want students to learn very early that it is going to be a hands-on profession, and that there will be physical contact with other people. And so we want to expose them to some fundamental skills and allow the students to have the opportunity to see what it feels like to be in that environment where you are not only verbally engaging with others, but also physically engaging with others.
The same work for respiratory. We have labs the first semester, and they have to do a lot of hands-on with mannequins, setting up oxygen setups, and it's kind of neat because they get checked off in the lab, and then when they see it with real people, it's kind of like, wow, this is making sense, or this is kind of nice to do.
Yeah, and we teach the entire lifespan. So semester to semester, it's going to be, we're going to teach how to work with children, how to work with adults, how to work with elders. And so they learn different parts of the lifespan as they progress. But yes, definitely week one, day one, they're already doing hands-on learning.
Okay, so switching a little bit into more of the application or process, how many students are admitted into each of your programs, and which one do you think is the most competitive to get into? Students want to know.
Marty will know which one's the most competitive.
I think they're all competitive. They're all special admittance programs. They have to have specific requirements to apply. And those requirements must be met by their application, everything from TSI, having a certain GPA, prerequisite courses passed with a grade of a B or better, OTA and PTA will require the HESI A2 exam and also required observation volunteer hours that have to be done in inpatient and outpatient settings. I think they all are very competitive, but out of the three right now, I think PTA would be a little bit more competitive just because they have also a essay and they have an interview process that's part of their selection, including a handbook exam. So sometimes students are like, oh my God, it's an extra step for us. But all of them are great programs. We have applications due every year, once a year. PTA will have their application deadline due in May, at the end of May. OTA will be in June, which will be the 18th of June or 25th of June. And then the respiratory would be around July 8th this year. So those would be for students applying that will get accepted for the cohort that will start in the fall. But when they come and meet with me, I will explain the point system. I like to be very clear with what the expectations are and how we select our students in our program.
And I would like to add just one other thing. In the last 2 years, we've begun leaning towards a more holistic approach towards admission. So we have the option that if a student who would like to apply happens to be perhaps one of the requirements is not met fully, maybe the GPA is a little bit lower than our minimum threshold, they are being given the opportunity to write a letter discussing why maybe they were unable to meet that requirement. Sometimes it's life circumstances that got in the way, but they're prepared in other ways. So we are considering those each year.
Okay. That's good that you share that with the students. Now, looking into, like I said, in how many students are admitted into each of these programs each year?
For respiratory, I can only take 33 per year. So it is a selective admission program based on how many points system, but I select 33 per year.
For BTA, our max is 22, but on the average, we take 21. And then what I try to do is reserve a spot for a student who might be returning, who has had to repeat the program for one reason or another. So typically it's a guaranteed 21 new spots.
And ours is a max of 20 students a year. So, but again, also depending on the circumstances, if we have any that are returning for whatever reason, then that number might be a little less.
Okay. And what are the most important skills or qualities students should develop before starting your programs to be successful?
Ganas. With motivation, honestly, a student has to be self-motivated. They have to have that personal drive that is not, because they're not going to be paid for the experience. And there are long days and long nights and frustration. But at the same time, it can be extremely rewarding because you're learning such valuable skills and they have the potential to change people's lives. So once they get into that practicum experience and start working one-on-one with patients, that's usually a huge motivator. But students do have to have that intrinsic motivation to be able to get up and tackle what is necessary. I would say that that's one of the biggest that we can't teach. It has to be a skill that somebody has on their own. And then, as Ms. Vargas mentioned, reading comprehension is essential because they will be going through lots of books and lots of chapters, and the ability to break it down is really, really important. And then I think the third one that I would emphasize is that ability to interact with other people, because these are people professions. You're not going to be behind a screen. you're going to be in front of families and patients, and so that comfort level and that joy of being able to do that every day, a patient can tell when you really like interacting. And so I think those are essential skills to be effective. And we're going to teach therapeutic use of self, and we're going to teach therapeutic touch. But if that is not something that you enjoy doing, then I think the patients can tell.
And I think like in respiratory, and like probably like with the rest as well, is they're required to take like an intro class. So for us, it's an intro to respiratory. And in that classroom, we start assessing the students. Are they showing up on time? Are they sleepy? Are they asking questions? Are they doing their homework? And those are things that it's kind of like we're evaluating them how they work, because I think if they're interested in any of the programs, I would encourage them to take that intro class, because they're going to learn about the profession. But we're also going to be evaluating them in a sense, because I mean, if I have students that are absent several times, they're not going to be learning a lot of the information. And then you have the ones that are creating study groups. They're going to the library. They're using the resources that we have. They're using the tutors. And I think that speaks volume. I mean, I have a student, I'm not going to name the student, right? But he's kind of encouraging the rest of the class, kind of like having gym buddies, like, hey, have you done the work? I'm going to have this room set up. Can you want to come and join me for this study session? And I think that's great culture to have as students. So I think that's important for advice.
I think for occupational therapy, you have to want to make a change in a person's life and be an impact in their lives. The therapeutic use of self, I think, is at the heart of our profession. Being able, like Diana said, interact with people, because you're going to be dealing with families, you're going to be dealing with parents, with grandparents, with caregivers, with significant others, and they're all part of the client-centered care, right? The client-centered focus, keeping that person at the center of it all, and wanting to make a difference, because at the end, our goal is to make them be as independent as possible in their everyday occupations and everything they do. And we do really look at a person holistically, mind, body, and social being, right? It's important that we keep in account all those aspects of the person, because, they're all very important.
I think also that's what's very important is the student being able to accept constructive feedback from faculty, because a lot of times when they get it for the first time, they block themselves and don't allow them to have the opportunity to grow. So that's also something that's very important.
Okay. And I want to ask this one because I am an anatomy professor, but we did get questions on how big of an impact is the anatomy class going to be towards them being part of your program.
Anatomy is the foundation of our profession.
Yes.
So you like that, don't you?
Yes. I
Yeah.
want them to hear from you, so that when I'm with them and telling them this is important, they know it is.
Yeah, that you cannot overlearn anatomy. So we hope that our students, come to us with a solid foundation. We know what they should know, and the expectation is we're going to then layer our information on top of the foundation that they should come to us with. So it is very important.
And I think as an advice is a lot of students, I mean, I did that as a student, they study for the test. But what I tell them is don't forget that information, because when they come to us, I'm like, for example, I would tell them, what is the percentage of oxygen? And I'm like, you didn't learn that in class? And they're like, oh, we did for the test. And I go, you have to retain it. So that is a foundation and it's very important. So if they're I know for respiratory, we recommend that they take it within 5 years anatomy, because I feel like they have a disadvantage if they, they're not going to remember a lot of the information. So we encourage them to retake it if it's been more than 5 years.
For OTA and PTA, they have a very intense anatomy class within their first semester of the program. So the students have to come in with a very good foundation in order for them to be successful in those courses.
And like Diana said, they're going to learn it more on a therapeutic standpoint, on a functional standpoint, but they still need the basis of all, the anatomy. So it is very important that they not forget, like Gabe says, and I always tell the students, here you're learning for life, not just for a test. And at the end, they have to sit in on a board exam, a national board exam that certifies them. And it's a 4-hour, 250 question exam. And so it's important that everything they learn in the program that they retain also.
And I don't think you hear it that much, but some of our students, they thank their anatomy instructors for that foundation. So they tell us, and I'm like, you need to let them know, because maybe they're not aware. Like sometimes we only hear like the bad things, but it's amazing how they talk really good about the instructors. And I myself, I'm interested in taking anatomy again, and they're like, really, sir? And I'm like, yeah, I wanna have that experience again. Right? I wish I had more time to retake a class, right? But it's good.
That's good to hear. And I like what you mentioned of learning for life. That's a very nice way of putting it, because yes, students focus on the exam. Okay, and this is also kind of a little bit, I have like 2 questions for the application. What extracurriculars, certifications would you recommend getting that would look good in an application for any of your programs?
Well, our programs is strictly a point system. It's very straightforward. It's based on academics. For occupational therapy and physical therapist assistant, it's academics. It's the HESI A2 exam. It's observation hours. And then there's 2 additional courses that are optional, that are not required. They can still apply to the program without them, and those will award them some extra points. And that's College Success for Healthcare and Medical Terminology. And those 2 courses are going to give them a lot of great skills in order for them to be successful in our programs. College Success teaches them everything from time management, reading strategies, test taking tips. And then, of course, the medical terminology is just, getting to understand the medical terms a lot better for the professions. For Mr. Respiratory Therapy, College Success is also a class that will award those additional points. But other than that, we don't take in recommendation letters. Volunteer hours for all 3 programs will give them points as well. But that's about it.
Okay, good to know that. And so if you have a freshman, what would you recommend for them to get ready to apply to your program besides, taking the entrance exams and the HESI?
Like starting
a freshman before applying to their
right, high school coming in. Okay. TSI completion, of course, if they're in high school right now, take your TSI to be prepared. That would be the first one, so that they can start taking our prerequisite courses instead of having to take developmental. Then meeting with us as an advisors, as my academic guided pathway specialist, so that I can help them, what classes they need when they're getting ready to apply to our program on a timely manner. Basically taking Anatomy 1, taking your composition, taking your anatomies before taking your HESI. What else would they? Just make sure that we go down the degree plan and they take the sequences that they need. If a student is coming in as a freshman and their TSI complete, they can essentially apply to our program by the upcoming application deadline, which is basically 2 semesters.
And then to add to that, I think the volunteer experience, and I know it's required for points, but I do believe as a beginning student, that really helps, because when you do get into the classroom, if you've had several volunteer opportunities, it helps to provide context to what you're learning. When we start talking about something, a student will then say, oh, I saw that. I didn't know what it was about at the time, but now it makes sense. So I think if they have that chance to get out and just observe in different settings, not only will it help to kind of light the fire of, okay, this is where I can see myself in the future, it also then will translate into the classroom.
And even though there's a minimum amount of the volunteer hours, I mean, they could always get a summer job as you know, a rehab tech or somewhere where therapy is happening, where they can see it, like Diana says, hands-on, and get that also visual, you know, of, is this something I really want to do? Because, you know, it's a career.
Okay, and talking a little bit, because a lot of students, especially, get very stressed for the HESI exam. Any recommendations when on the HESI exam? Any resources that you have seen that help students?
When students are coming into our program with those requirements, we do give them a list of resources. There's different study guides that they can use, that they can purchase. They can go to the library. The CLEs have them as well. There's apps. There's like Nurse Hub, Quizlet, YouTube tutorials, and our CLE has tutors also to help them prepare for the HESI. So there's lots of resources students can use to prepare. And of course, taking the anatomies before they take it as well, because the science component on the HESI is strictly anatomy and physiology.
And yes, just not procrastinating or thinking they can study last minute. I mean, I'm sure it does take some preparation time. And they are allowed to take the HESI up to 2 times per semester.
And I just wanted to add that respiratory doesn't require HESI.
They do not. They do not. But students have been doing very well lately with the HESI because of all the resources available to them. If they take advantage of those resources, they're going to do well. And all we need is a minimum 75 composite in English, science, and math in order for them to apply. If they score above a 75, additional points will be awarded on the application.
Okay, we did get this question, and I'm also interested in knowing what is that class or the biggest hurdle that students have when it comes to completing your program?
We're not supposed to say. In PTA, I think if you took a survey, they would agree it's our second semester, because our second semester has 2 5-hour lab courses in addition to a pathology course. So I typically tell students the first semester, you're learning how to learn in this new environment. And then the second semester, you're going to put all of that into practice along with your time management. So, you know, we kind of talked about people working. Usually it's that second semester when they make a decision that they're not going to work. Historically, if a student can make it out of first and second semester, they're going to graduate. Because by then they are so strong in their ability to manage their time and work collaboratively. They're highly motivated because they're figuring, well, I made it out of the hardest part, so it's good going from here. So if you were to ask, and I won't name a particular course, I would just say second semester.
And for respiratory, it's similar. Like what we try to do is the first semester, they only have 2 classes, but they're kind of seeing the rigor of the program. And then the following semester is like full time, like 4 or 5 classes, 4 classes plus the clinical experience. And that's when time management really affects them in a sense. But we're doing it slowly, doing that transition. For the classes, it is up to the student. Some of them find it mechanical ventilation to be kind of difficult, but we do have the lab component where they can play with an actual ventilator, see the graphics, see the how it works. But I think at the beginning is scary for them, but I mean it's doable.
I have to agree with the second semester just being so, and I tell them at the end of first semester, put on your seatbelts because we're gonna start doing, and we're gonna do a lot, and you just got to be ready. You got to be ready for a lot of lab practicals, skills checks that we do throughout the semester because we want to make sure that they're gathering the skills required for their lab practicals. But also, it is challenging that first semester in the anatomy course that we provide. You know, that one is hard for some people. So I can't stress enough, anatomy is very foundational for starting.
I think when talking to the students in the programs, they're going to be difficult courses regardless because it's healthcare. But I think what's really keeps them sometimes is they're only putting in their time into one course and forgetting about the others. And that's when it becomes stressful and they like feel like the other course is a lot harder. But if they manage their time, there's lots of resources with each program besides the faculty, their lab assistants, tutors, and then the peers themselves. Our students are very successful.
What I tell students, and I mean, you don't have to agree with me, but at least for my program, I don't think you have to be like super smart, like Albert Einstein, you know, but are you willing to sacrifice a lot of things? And what I tell students is a lot of our students, they sacrifice on their social life because what I tell them is for me, it's easier to watch Netflix than to read my book. But they have to read, and if they apply, they have that discipline, they're gonna be successful. So I tell them how much do you want it? Like, do you really want it? And I think the other classmates serve as a motivator because they see them studying. Like sometimes I come on Friday and I see students studying and they don't have class on Fridays and they're in the afternoon studying. And that's probably what it takes to be successful. So not think about a difficult class, is thinking of the time they have to invest for that class. And today, actually, one of the instructors was saying that she accidentally told our students, "Hey, how was your weekend?" And they were like, "We were studying." And she's like, "Oh, okay." So they're like, "What weekend?" type of thing. So.
And our students, I have to say, they live here. They're here for, you know, throughout the day, on days where they don't have class, they're here practicing. They're dedicated. You have to be dedicated to the program and the want to learn the skills and practice the skills. So it goes beyond classroom time. So I just want to make that clear too, that, you know, it's required to practice beyond the classroom time to be successful.
And when they're not here, they're often together somewhere else, studying in a study room somewhere, or at Starbucks having a session, or they're on Zoom now, and they'll do Zoom sessions. So a lot of commitment and a lot of collaboration.
And I have to give kudos to, again, our guided pathway specialist. She's great with them, offering them resources. The CLE is amazing and very supportive of our programs. The library is very supportive in getting us resources that we need to have on the shelf or in the databases, or, you know, ebooks options. So we're very supported here at our division.
Just to add on that, they have OT has a tutor, and he has a doctoral degree, right? Or no?
Yeah.
No?
Yeah.
Or OT?
Jose.
Yeah.
Or no, Joe, he's no longer.
Oh,
there.
yes,
He's no
yeah.
longer here.
No, yes.
Well, what I'm saying is, even my students were saying, "Sir, they have a tutor that he has a PhD in the CLE," and I was like, "OT, yeah."
Yeah, we have a DPT tutor, and we have a. Yeah.
So, and I'm personal alumni from our program, and I did all the way to, also I have my OTD, and seeing our students going back, a lot of our students do return and pursue their higher degrees of PTA does too. And it's just so rewarding to see that full circle and them telling us, you know, that they're continuing their educations, and you know, and they often come back and they're like, oh my gosh, your program was just so helpful with my school, and so that brings us joy too.
I bet. I actually like this next question because this semester I had a student not ask me, but say express that she was going through this conflict. So if a student is feeling conflicted in what program they'd like to move forward with, what advice would you give them to help them choose a path?
I know in our principals class, we often do have or encounter students that are on the fence, right, on what to choose. And at the end, I don't influence them. They have to make that choice. They have to, and we often have had ones that take both the PTA course and the OTA. But at the end, like I say, I try not to influence them. I teach, you know, and at the end they make that decision because they know what they would like for themselves, and it's really their choice and what they want to do, because they got to love what they do and they got to do it for life. So you want them to choose something that they enjoy.
I think their observation hours, if they get the opportunity to do observation hours in the discipline they're trying to go into, is going to be their biggest eye opener, because they get to see therapists already working with the children, with the adults in the different settings. And that's really, to me, what's going to be more of an eye opener. But they have to have a passion for what they want to go into also in order to enjoy it.
And if they have the time and resources, I would say the introduction classes, because they are prerequisites to the curriculum. They are taught by faculty who are full-time in the curriculum. So they will get a feel for the culture of the program, the faculty style, the expectations. So that, I believe, in with combined with the volunteer hours, I think that will help them to find their match, and which program seems to fit better with them.
And one more thing is the programs are selective admission, and it's okay for them to have a plan B and a plan C. So most of our students, they're aware of those things. They know that they only accept a certain amount of students, and it's okay to have a plan B. I think it's just knowing what they're gonna want to do. Like, do I want to work with babies, or I want to work with adults, and what kind of job duties you're gonna be doing, right?
So we have a few questions. So I'm trying to see if kind of uniting these questions on when a student has completed your program, what higher degrees or specialties they can continue. And they also want to know if the programs help them with job placement.
Yeah, for PTA, there are several options. The entry level is the associate degree, and there is now the option for a bachelor's degree. I believe there's 1 or 2 schools that are currently offering that, but that's more involved with like job opportunities for pay scales. But the terminal degree is a doctorate in physical therapy. And we currently have a bridge program where we are afforded the opportunity to nominate up to 2 students from each graduating class for entry into the UTMB Health Science Center DPT program. So we've been assisting students with this process since 2015. And we have probably 10 to 15 who are already graduated from STC and acquired their DPT. And so that's a really great opportunity. The bridge allows them to do this for less time, less money, because it is a more condensed curriculum. UTRGV also now has a brand new DPT program. They've enrolled their first cohort, and I believe they're getting ready to enroll their second cohort. And we have a graduate who's in that program as well. It's not a bridge, it's a traditional, but it's still a local option. Historically, all of our graduates have jobs within 3 months of graduation. We do help them. I am teaching a capstone course right now, and we bring in employers to speak to students and help get them connected. We also help them to try to refine through projects what setting it is that they believe they're best suited for and what their priorities are when it comes to job selection. So the faculty are very involved in that process of trying to help our students not only graduate, but then get the employment that they want.
You can.
For respiratory, we have, we're talking about the, I just want to, well, we are affiliated with several schools where they can transition and get their associates with us, and in 1 year they can get their bachelor's of science in respiratory care. So that's pretty nice because they can work, and the bachelor's of science is completely online. And then respiratory is a baby profession compared to a lot of professions. So there's a new advanced level practitioner program equivalent to a physician assistant or a nurse practitioner. They have it in Ohio, and right now with the Texas Society for Respiratory Care, they're going to bring it to Texas. So Texas is going to have that program, and I'm looking forward to that. That will be at the same level as a physician assistant, but in respiratory. And for job placement, actually, there's a big demand, and I'm pretty sure for all healthcare professions, but there's a big demand for respiratory. They have a website called morerts.com, and they're trying to promote the profession. But what is kind of crazy, and it happened this year, and I haven't shared it with all the shares, is that Cincinnati, Ohio came to recruit our students in McAllen. And that's like the #1 pediatric children's hospital. And I'm telling my boss the pay rate is kind of like very interesting. And they came and talked to our seniors. They brought like pizza. They talk about all the benefits. If they're interested in working there, they can travel to Ohio. They'll pay for their transportation. They'll get to see the hospital. To me, that's kind of amazing that they're willing to hire students before they even graduate. I think 10 of our students are going to go to Lubbock for recruitment. So they're already booking flights over there because the director from that hospital came and talked to our students. So I'm just saying that when I'm talking to local hospitals, I tell them you have competition from out of state and from out of this area too. But I think it's amazing. Unemployment is only if you don't want to work, because when you're in these professions, you're gonna get a job and multiple options for them, which is amazing. But you have to do the sacrifices. I tell them, don't look just at that. There's a lot of sacrifices, and then you see the rewards.
And for occupational therapy, like Diana's, that there is a bachelor's degree available, but at the end, it's the same title. The only difference is that they have to do a capstone project at the bachelor level. There is master programs. UT Tyler right now has one that's like considered a bridge because it accepts only OTAs, but I think I overheard they are considering just opening that opportunity to anybody who wants to study their master's. So we do encourage our students to pursue their bachelor's degrees here at South Texas College. And then after that, they can either apply to the master's program or even the entry-level doctorate. Also, we have that available, and there's different options of that. UTRGV currently has a 3.5-year entry-level doctorate. Then there's some that are hybrid in nature, and you can do it in 2 years. So it just depends on the intensity and the how you want to go back to school. Because the hybrid one, that's 2 years, it's an accelerated program, and it's at Baylor University. They do it in 2 years, but it's on super speed. It's accelerated for a reason, right? And then there's also PhDs in occupational therapy, but that's if you want to do more research. If you want to be the researcher, then that would be more like a 4-year degree that you would pursue.
But even with just the Associates of Applied Science degree from these programs, our students are hired. We get a lot of very good feedback from our local clinics and hospitals and nursing homes on they're very, very satisfied with the type of graduate that comes from these programs. For the years that I've worked here, I've never had a student come back and say, I couldn't find a job, or I didn't like the type of profession I'm in. Even some of our students with associate's degree have positions as director in rehab. So even with an associate's degree, they can do very, very well.
Yes, and they're offered, so many
good pay too.
And even in field work, they're already being offered job opportunities upon completion and taking their exams. So
we had an employer come for a luncheon yesterday, and it was interesting. What she said was, as a new graduate, you have no reputation yet. Your reputation is the fact that you have graduated from STC. That is what's going to get you in the door.
And it's true.
I'm glad to hear that, and hopefully this eases a little bit of the worry that students have when going into these programs about job placement and what type of jobs they can get and how fast. So that's good to know. So we always get questions that are a little bit more towards our speakers. So here trying to kind of finalize our talk, these questions are going to be a little more personal to your experience. And I like this question. What is your favorite memory when it comes to your experience in your field?
there's so many. There's so many. I was primarily a pediatric therapist, so I worked with children, but I worked with the entire lifespan. So I did do some acute care and with elders. I did home health. I did home health with pediatrics too. I did schools-based therapy, but the vast majority has been with children, and just seeing children develop, and reach these milestones, and be able to see them achieve things beyond people's expectations is just, it's so rewarding to see that you've helped make that difference in someone's life. And again, looking beyond the disability, because that's very important too, that students come in knowing that we look at the ability, not the disability. That's how we need to approach, because we never know what they're capable of doing until they try, right? And when they're given opportunities and we learn how to modify or adapt the way they do things, and they can do something, it's just it's awesome.
Go ahead.
Okay, for me, I worked for 23 years. I started when I was 5. No. I worked for 23 years with premature babies in the neonatal intensive care unit. So I would go to all the deliveries, and I would take care of babies that were like super small, the size of my hand. And the main thing is to make sure they're breathing okay. And we put them on those machines that breathes for them, right? And having that conversation and providing that patient education for the parents, you don't know how you impact the community. And one day, I was at the mall, and this lady recognized me, and she's like, "You saved my baby's life." And I think those are things that you don't realize you do, right? You do so many things, and what I tell the students is they're not gonna forget you because you were there on the time that they needed you the most, and it's the way you make them feel. Like if you provide that support, you provide that education, you do the best of your ability, they're gonna remember you for forever. Like they're not gonna forget your face or your name. And that happened in the mall when a lady just stopped me and said, "You saved my baby's life." And I'm like, "Where's the baby?" And it was a 13-year-old. And I'm like, "Oh my goodness." But yeah, those things happen, and I think that's amazing to be able to do something like that.
And I think for me, I'm on the opposite end of the lifespan. I think one of the more memorable experiences I had was my biology teacher, actually in high school, who knew me as, just a regular high school kid. And then I ended up being his therapist at a hospital setting. And of course, he was shocked to see me, and I was shocked to see him. And I think initially he was imagining me as a 17-year-old or 16-year-old that he had worked with. So we had that change of authority. But seeing him make progress and being able to help achieve the goals that he really wanted was real. It was a very satisfying time, and then it changed the dynamic of our relationship. And so then he was able to then come back and visit with me later and say, after working with you, I was able to hike again. I was able to do the gardening that I hadn't been able to do. And I think it really opened his eyes to the value of therapy and how life-changing it could be. And then it was real memorable for me because it was somebody from my childhood or my youth that I was able to help.
And I think just the circle of life, right? As we progress in life and, grow, eventually everyone around us ages, right? And just our ability to be able to do that. And that's kind of what I always tell my students. I'm teaching you to be a therapist because you might be taking care of me one day, or my grandma or my mom, and I want to make sure that you're prepared to do that. So I say, if you have to place yourself in that situation where you're providing care for a loved one, that's the way you need to look at it.
I'm not a therapist. I'm more on the other side. I'm more of just guiding the students and trying to get into our programs. But I think what's very rewarding is helping them since day one, coming in to learn about our programs and then graduating. My parents are a lot older, and they've been getting a lot of sick lately, and they've been in the hospital, and they've been receiving therapy from OTAs, PTAs, and respiratory therapists that have graduated from our programs that I've advised. So that to me is very rewarding to see them, being in the community and helping others, specifically my parents.
Those are very beautiful memories. How did you know you wanted to do this profession? I know it's a big question.
I was very young. I was probably 10 when I chose to be a therapist. My dad had a really bad motorcycle accident, and it was the middle of summer, so I was led to go with him to therapy sessions, and I would see everything being done. But I knew at a very young age that I wanted to be a therapist. And then my older cousin, was an occupational therapist. So he kind of told me about it. I was like, well, that sounds good, right? And again, like I say, I was young when I started the program here. I graduated at 22, so I was like 20 when I came into this program. So,
Yeah. I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. The only stipulation I had was I wanted a profession in which I knew I was able to help people. And then I just started investigating, and I changed my major multiple times within my first year of college. And I took a health science professions course at Pan American at the time, and did some volunteer time in a physical therapy department. And that's when it changed my perspective, and I realized how life-changing the experience could be, and went and applied and started PT school within the year.
And I think for me, I was in HOSA during high school, and my teacher was a nurse, and she focused, or she would emphasize on respiratory. And I was curious to see what they would do, because there's not a lot of, I kind of joke around that we're not in Grey's Anatomy, so a lot of people don't know about us. We are in the pit on that new show, and I think one of the instructors and a lot of respiratory therapists, they were calling the show and say, hey, we need representation. I think a lot of during COVID, a lot of people started hearing about respiratory therapy, but I started in HOSA, and that was actually my plan B. I was deciding to, I wanted to do pre-med, but then I was thinking, let me look at this career. It sounds interesting, and that's how I became a respiratory therapist.
Okay. What is one, if you can only give one piece of advice, what would you tell potential students for your program?
Go for it.
I think thinking about students, if you really want it, you can do it. And I think, I truly believe that you just have to invest that time. So I think it's being motivated, and then trying to accept change. I always say this to students, but when you come to a program, it's kind of like going to another country and adapting. You cannot go to another country and say like, oh, they don't have cute tacos, and I'm like, no, but they have breakfast, and you have to adapt to that program. So I think is when you come to our programs, you're gonna have to adapt to us, but it can be done. It's manageable. So motivation will be the key.
Yeah, I think I completely agree with everything he said, but because you're going to make me pick one, I would say what I tell the students is trust the process, and we know what we're doing. We have been doing this for so long. This is my 29th year here, and our graduates are amazing because we have a really good formula for success. But the students have to buy in and just let us make them into clinicians. So if they trust the process, regardless of it doesn't make sense right now, and I don't understand why we have to do things this way, we know how to build from the bottom up. And so if they buy into it and just let us do our magic, and they do their part, we will do our part, and before they know it, the experience will be over, and they'll be in their first job, and life will be good again.
And it's hard to pick one thing, but just whatever they choose to do it with passion, to love what they do, and do it full-heartedly. Whatever they choose, whichever path, that they do it full-heartedly, and that they love what they do. And like Diana says, they may not like it at that point, but it's a short-term sacrifice for a long-term goal. So
I would think to not be afraid to try new things. A lot of our students are very afraid of the first semester, actually after their first week. Like, how am I going to do this? And then they finish the 5 semesters, they graduate, we see them walk the stage, and then they take their board and they passed it and they have a job. But it's like they're very afraid of the unknown. Am I going to be able to do this? Am I going to be able to understand what they're saying? And like Ms. Hernandez said, it's just trusting the process. Each faculty is specialized in their area, and they're very devoted to student success. And that's something that they just have to embrace, to trust the process while they're
here. Okay, well, those are all the questions that we selected, and a lot of them were while the students were live watching. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for joining us. Hopefully we can do it in the future again. But thank you so much, our students. I think it was very rich what you have shared, and I really think it would help a lot of our students. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Yes.
For those of you that are watching, we will have 2 more speakers in the month of April. Make sure to ask your professors when those dates we confirm them, we will let them know. Thank you so much for joining us and have a good evening, everyone.